All right, guys, welcome to the video. We're gonna do a deadlift tutorial here, working through the different mechanics of the deadlift, and we'll cover the sumo and the conventional pull as well in this, just to give some more detail. I know we've done some stuff on this before, but it hasn't been comprehensive, and Alex and I haven't been able to be in the same place when those things were happening. I am pulling sumo most of the time these days, and he's a conventional puller, so this hopefully will be helpful for both of you guys trying to figure out which one you want to use and then how to go about implementing either one of them. Mm-hmm. So why don't we start with the conventional pull and kind of work our way through it. What's kind of your mindset when you are approaching the bar, and how do you set up for the lift?
Yeah, so as I'm walking up to the bar, obviously I'm focused on the task at hand, which is, lifting this bar, getting it in the air successfully. So what I want to do is be patient with my setup and then aggressive with the lift itself. So I'm going to walk up to the bar, and if you're wearing shoes with laces, which ironically I would recommend generally you don't, at least if they have any type of angled sole, you want to either be barefoot, sock feet like I am, or have flat soles like Tate does. But either you're looking, at the middle part of your laces, or just your midfoot if you're barefoot. You want that directly under the bar. You don't want to be way out back here, and then you don't want to already have your shins pushing up into the bar and pushing it away. So coming up into the bar, midfoot is directly under the bar as you're looking straight down at it. Somewhere in the shoulder width range is where your feet are gonna go. It's gonna be a little bit individual, kind of play around and find something that feels good for you. And that's fine. It doesn't have to be cookie cutter for everybody. But if you're gonna pull conventional, generally you don't want a super wide stance. It just doesn't make sense, because then your hands have to be wider. The bar has to travel further. It's just gonna be way more difficult than it needs to be. So somewhere in the shoulder width range for your feet, and then your hands are gonna come down just outside of your legs. You want them pretty much as close to your legs as you can get them without forcing your hands to run over your knees and your legs, because that's just gonna mess with your grip. So you're gonna get a solid grip, and we'll touch more on grip specific stuff in a second, but you'll get a good grip on the bar. And then I always like to pull myself into the lift. So as you can see here, I'm not in a great position. My hips are super high, my back is super rounded, not how we want to deadlift. So I'll grab the bar, and then I will pull myself in. My hips will come down a little bit. My back will lock into a neutral position here. And so now I'm in a good spot to start this lift. And I'm thinking equal parts pulling the bar away from the ground and pushing the ground away from me with my feet.
You noticed earlier that he said that he's patient when he approaches, and then there's a significant amount of aggression when we go for the pull.
Yes, you don't want to be out of control, but you're also, for a normal deadlift, there's going to be very few cases where I'm going to go deliberately, very slowly through the concentric portion of the movement. Almost always going to be moving with a high rate of force production.
Yeah. And I think there's something about this movement that is particular to that mindset.
Yes.
You have to have a certain amount of resolve walking up to the bar.
Correct.
And especially as the weight improves, I don't want to act like every beginner should feel that way going into it the first 6 months that they've ever deadlifted. But you can get to that state of mind pretty quickly with some experience.
For sure.
And so once you have the form figured out, you feel comfortable there, start working on the mindset of deadlifting, which I think is really one of the most key parts of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I set up in a sumo setup. This is not what I actually have always done. I used to conventional pull, but had a hamstring injury a couple years ago, and for whatever reason, sumo doesn't bother me as much as the conventional does. I will still conventional sometimes, but for the most part, I like sumo What Alex said about getting his hands basically as close to his shins as he can, like where his thumb knuckle is rubbing against his shin in the conventional setup, I essentially do the same thing, but with my pinkies and my legs are outside, my hands are inside. So you see a lot of guys these days set up with a crazy wide sumo stance. That seems like you're gonna be able to pull the weight a lot easier because it's not moving as far of a distance. But until you get into that position, you don't realize this. It takes a tremendous amount of hip mobility to get in a good position that way.
Yes.
To get your knees out over your toes in a really wide stance like that is extremely difficult. It's a huge demand on your hip flexors and your groin. I don't suggest starting at that point if you're just getting into deadlifting.
No.
If you've been doing this for years and you decide you want to get into the sport of powerlifting, you want to do really wide sumo pulls, great, go for it. But even if you're going to do a sumo pull and you're kind of in the beginning years of deadlifting, I would still stay essentially with your feet underneath you as much as possible. So I will reach down, and there's knurling on this bar. I will get essentially just my pinky and my ring finger on that knurling, and I'll double overhand grip, and then my feet are going to set up to where my shins are touching just against my forearms here. And so one of the ways that I actually kind of create some tension at the beginning of the lift is I drive my elbows out into my knees to help get them out over my toes. So I don't want to be starting the deadlift here. I want my knees out over my toes so that there's as many straight lines going into the ground as possible. What I mean by that is I can get as vertical of a shin angle as possible. I also want to be able to get my spine as vertical as I can possibly get it going into the movement. So I create tension with my elbows against my knees. Very similar to Alex. I'll reach down, grab the bar. I will take a big breath and brace in. We talked about this in the bench press video as well, but bracing is extremely important in the deadlift, which is why people wear belts. It's actually to maintain that core stability. A big portion of that is the big breath that you're taking in and then squeezing down through your diaphragm as you set up for the lift. So reach down, grab the bar, create some tension with my elbows against my knees, big breath in. Just like that. And you'll notice I'm dragging, essentially, I say drag. I'm not actually dragging the bar against my shins, but I want this to feel like I'm dragging the weight up my legs rather than lifting it up into the air and then to my hips, which is, I think, something you see a lot with beginner deadlifters.
Yes.
They try to grab the bar out in front of them, and it's like out over their toes. Alex talked about this, like get your feet under the bar. But if you're lifting the bar off the ground, and that's the thing in your mind that you're thinking about doing is getting the bar off the ground, oftentimes it's going to be too far from you. You want the weight to be as close to your center of mass as possible. And the way to do that is to think about pulling the bar to you, pulling the bar to your hips rather than just up into the air. So that's my sumo setup. I can do that one more time. I'll set up with my feet out a little bit wider, try to get vertical shins. My butt is down, my hips are down, and then big breath in. And pulling the bar to my hips. So let's kind of talk about grip now a little bit, because I think this is important.
Yeah.
You'll see when someone's trying to, and this is actually possibly a consequence of you trying to pull the bar to yourself, but you'll see some bent elbows in the deadlift, which can get pretty dangerous as the weight gets heavier.
Can, yeah.
Especially if you have a mixed grip, which we'll talk about here in just a second, and you're trying to pull the bar to you when it's way more weight than you can curl, can be dangerous. Pulling, tearing biceps, that kind of thing, which I don't think is a high risk thing for most people.
No, you'd have to be a pretty strong deadlift.
You would have to
generally to be at risk of tearing bicep.
Yeah,
I think even more than injury risk. If you're consistently pulling with bent elbows, you're just not going to be able to pull as much.
Right.
Your strength is going to suffer. It's just not as good of a position to pull in.
Yeah.
When I'm pulling, I'm thinking of my arms basically as ropes that are connecting my torso to the bar. obviously my hands are gripping. They're kind of the hooks that anchor everything together. But the arms itself, I'm not consciously thinking about flexing. Certainly, there's no real room for elbows to be bent. So when I'm coming in to grab the bar, come in and I'll bend. And then when I pull the slack out of the bar, my arms are, except my hands, my arms are fairly slack. There's no bent elbows involved.
Mm-hmm. Pulling slack out of the bar, is that something you're thinking about doing a lot when you are pulling?
At this point, it's not something I consciously think about.
It's not for me either. No. I've heard a lot of coaches talk about it. That might be a personal thing for people, and I'm sure there is an advantage to pulling the slack out of the bar.
Yeah. What I do not want to see is a recipe for bad things is for you to kind of like try and get momentum going into the lift.
Right.
So I guess I think that's generally what pulling slack out of the bar is combating. The concept is like here the bar, there's slack in the bar, and now you can hear that. I'm putting just a little bit of tension on it before I pull. What I do not want to see anybody do, and I'm going to do it just once with fairly light weight compared to my deadlift strength on the bar, is to get down here, to get yourself all psyched up, and then to try and generate momentum to pull with. So you're kind of coming down and trying to really just rip things up. That's a recipe for some bad things down the road. So if pulling the slack out of the bar helps prevent that for you, do so. If it's not something you have to focus on, I wouldn't personally spend a massive amount of time obsessing over that.
I was just thinking about this. You said that you like to pull yourself into the movement.
That all kind of works together. That's
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good way of making sure there's not a bunch of slack in your position, but in the bar as well. There's not like this is not very much space. You're not accomplishing a crazy amount of stuff by pulling that much slack out of the bar. The bigger problem is the bigger issue at hand is avoiding what you just showed us.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So let's talk about grip a little bit. With my setup, I typically am going double overhand. We tried this today in another workout that we did where I went mixed grip on a sumo.
It's weird.
It's just very odd. It's just difficult to do. It just feels strange. If you feel comfortable with it, go for it. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but it does feel awkward. The problem is just in a regular grip on the bar, double overhand or double underhand, if you were for some reason doing that, which I have done before. At some point, especially with an Olympic bar like this one has ball bearings in it. And so you can see that bar rolls really easily. Mm-hmm. The bar is going to try to roll out of your hands. So double overhand, and it's going to try to roll right out of your fingers. For a while, that's not a problem if the weight's not very heavy, but as you start getting close to maximal loads, there's a really good chance that your glutes and hamstrings and your back are stronger than your fingers.
They should be.
So the limiting factor is going to be your grip. What are some other ways that you could go about hanging onto the bar in order to avoid that rollout?
Yeah, so you have three main options other than your double overhand grip, which you can start out with. Honestly, I recommend guys take as many sets double overhand in their warm up as they can. It's just a good way to develop your grip.
I agree.
You're going to get to a point where your grip's your limiting factor and you're not deadlifting just to train your grip. So you want to progress heavier than your grip will allow. You have three options at that point. You can do a mixed grip, which instead of this would be double overhand, you would simply switch. You'd have one over and one under. That keeps the bar from being able to roll in either direction because you always have a hand that is rolling right into. And that would look something like this. When I do mixed grip, my right hand is always supinated underhand. And then my left hand is always pronated. You can switch that however works best for you. But everything else is the same. Just you're going to switch one hand to an underhand grip. Pros and cons there. You can definitely pull a lot more than double overhand. Over time, it can develop some asymmetries between your hands. We touched on it a little bit earlier. There is somewhat of an injury risk with bicep tears. I would generally, that's not as much of a risk as I think people make it out to be. It can happen.
Yeah,
it does happen, but not something that I would obsess over. I have done a lot of mixed grip stuff in the past. I've pulled over 600 pounds doing that, and it's never been an injury issue for me. Try it if you like it. Work with it. I don't think that from a guy who's going to deadlift, fairly heavy once a week, even twice a week, some weeks, like I don't think that it's really going to be that big of a deal.
Gotcha.
From the negatives, I don't think outweigh the positives. If you like it, go ahead and roll with it. So that's option one, mixed grip. Your second option is going to be a hook grip. So it's going to be both hands you're going to double overhand, but instead of just grabbing the bar like this, you're going to use your thumb and you're going to wrap your fingers around your thumb over the bar. For illustration purposes, where it's really easy to see, grab, use your thumb under, and then your fingers are going to wrap over your thumb like this. And then you would pull from that point. What that would look like, probably to the average eye, indiscernible from a double overhand grip, but get your thumbs in and then wrap around, and then you're just, again, the deadlift itself never changes. Pros and cons with a hook grip. The pros are, again, lift significantly more than you can with a double overhand grip. You don't have any of the concerns that you would with a mixed grip as far as, left versus right asymmetries, working different muscles differently. Your bicep is from your underhand. Hand is not really going to be at an injury risk. The big notable con is it hurts. It's just miserable.
It just
sucks.
hurts, yeah.
135 is not a big deal. You start to get more weight on the bar, and there's a lot of pressure on your thumbs. That's kind of the point of failure. I don't use that as an excuse. Just know that going in, most of the world record deadlifts that are pulled today use a hook grip. So you can pull 700, 800, 900, 1,000 pounds with a hook grip. It's possible.
You're not going to pull your thumbs off.
No, your thumbs will not come off.
It feels like they might, but they won't.
Yeah, you will be fine. It just it hurts. So build that tolerance with time, and you can see growth there. So that would be option 2 of 3.
Yeah.
And option 3 of 3 would be to use an aid like a lifting strap here. We have a few different types of straps. This is the most common that I see. This is what we happen to have here, so it's what we'll use.
Not hard to find, pretty cheap.
Yes. These are actually really nice ones. I have a cheap pair that cost less than $10 because I've seen them for sale since. They were given to me by a coach in high school, many, many moons ago. So it cost $7 and I still have them a decade later. Pretty good return on investment. So when you're setting these up, you're going to always want the strap to go towards your thumb like this, as opposed to it could go away from your thumb like that. So
let me see one real quick.
Yeah.
The tendency for people is when they grab these, they want to put their hand in the wrong way. You don't want the strap facing towards your elbow. You want the strap facing toward your fingers. So you want the strap coming out towards your fingers and towards your thumb. So
yes,
one thing there.
That's a good point.
Without fail, when I hand those to people for the first time, they put their hands in backwards, and then I have to fix it.
So put them on. Got the straps pointing towards your fingers and angled towards your thumbs. And then don't overcomplicate this as you're coming up. People have a tendency to get all sorts of discombobulated. You still want to grip the bars you touch your hands. So the hands go over and the straps go under, and then you just reach and the strap goes around, reach, strap goes around. You could, in theory, keep winding these around because there's more strap. I really don't notice enough of a benefit to do that. One rep is good. This is not something that just completely alleviates your need to grip the bar. It just helps you a little bit. So now that you've got your straps locked in, you're still going to grip hard and squeeze. And then you're just doing the same deadlifting you've been doing. So put yourself on the bar. And then when you're done, they unravel by themselves.
Yep.
And you're good to go. Benefits here, again, pull more than double overhand. You don't have any symmetry issues like a mixed grip, no injury risk. You also don't have the just general misery and discomfort of the hook grip.
Right.
But you are getting significantly less grip stimulus here. Depending on what you're doing, that could be good or bad. If you're competing in a sport of powerlifting, you can't use these. So I would discourage it for at least a significant portion of your deadlift training. But this is not a powerlifting specific video for powerlifters. So there are a lot of other good ways to train your grip aside from just deadlifting.
Yep.
So I would say that these have a good spot in just about anybody's gym bag repertoire.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest thing that people get sidetracked with these is it seems like a sign of weakness or something, like your hands are too soft to keep deadlifting or to hold on to the weight or something like that. The context matters though. You're not coming into deadlift to set a 1 rep max every single day.
Correct.
When you go to pull a 1 rep max, you don't necessarily have to use these. You can probably hang on to the bar for 1 rep. But if you're coming in to do 15 reps over the course of multiple sets at 85% of your 1 rep max, grip is going to become a factor. You don't want your hands to be absolutely shredded and unable to hang on to the bar where your grip is the limiting factor in a training session. So these are useful for that.
Yes.
Because the goal of the deadlift is to be able to pull more weight off the ground, which means the larger muscle groups need to get stronger. It's not to come in here and see how much weight you can hold. So
correct.
That's my thought process with these. When I set my current PR, I did not have straps on. Mm-hmm. But training for that, I use them quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's important to note. I have never missed a heavy deadlift because I couldn't grip it. I have missed entire weeks of deadlift training because I didn't want to be weak and use straps, and then I tore my hands to the point where they would just bleed, and I couldn't grab a bar, which is dumb. Don't do that. Both from you can get weight, I could have done a better job just taking care of the calluses on my hands in the first place, or I could have used a grip aid to help me not be in that position. But these are useful for sure. I would recommend that most gym goers have them at least in their bag to pull out as needed.
Yep. Quick thing right here at the end, neutral spine is something we've talked about in a previous video that I do want to touch on again just really quickly. You'll notice when Alex pulls himself into his conventional setup position, his back goes from an arced position to more of a straight line. And so we can show you what that looks like real quick. But you'll also notice that he's not hyperextended. So right now there's a good amount of bend in his spine as he gets set up.
Yes.
And then he's going to take a big breath, and then you'll see all the slack come out of that. Just like that. Yep.
So this is one ditch that you can fall into. I'm about as pro spine movement as any strength guy that I know. But the deadlift is not the place to start from a terrible position, a bent position.
Right.
So this is one ditch that you fall into. You don't want to initiate your pull in a conventional or a sumo deadlift like this. The other one that you'll see guys get into is they'll really overarch their back. They're going to essentially take the curve from going this way, and they'll bring it back that to go the other way.
Yeah.
And that also is not good. That's going to really limit your strength and also set you up for potentially you could hurt yourself that way too. Guys think that they're being safer, and it's not necessarily the truth. And I have heard a lot of what I would look at as not great deadlifting advice for people to do that. Like, make sure your back is, you make sure you have a C in your back. Your back is in a C shape. That's deadlift squat.
Or some sort of, we can talk about this too, like where you're setting your jaw.
Yeah.
But one of the things I heard coaches say when I was in high school and stuff training was they would go, look at the ceiling. Like look at the crease of where the wall meets the ceiling, in front of you or something like that, which puts you in a position like this, which is just not comfortable even without weight in your hands. You'll notice Alex, if you watch any of his videos where he's deadlifting heavy, his chin is tucked. So he actually takes a big breath in and then tucks his chin, and he's here during big pulls. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit more neutral, but my eyes are 8 feet in front of me on the ground. Yeah. I'm not ever doing this. Like, this is not comfortable. And like you mentioned, is actually not safer.
Correct.
Another thing that we probably should touch on is the fact that everyone is worried about hurting their backs, which is a valid concern. You had a small thing that was a flare up very recently.
Yeah.
I think that's, first of all, just part of the deal when you're deadlifting and pulling heavy weight off the ground. If you want to do hard, demanding, heavy things, sometimes there's going to be some repercussions for that. But the other part of this is that's how your back gets stronger.
Yes. You
have giant muscles in your back that, because people are scared of hurting their backs, never get worked. And so the first time you go to deadlift, there's going to be some probably abnormal soreness that you're feeling. Maybe some hitching and some just some strangeness going on for maybe a few days after that. That's not a totally abnormal thing. That's a normal thing. And the more that you deadlift, I've noticed this with myself because I was in that position. So let me preface with that. I was in a spot where I was like, I just don't want to hurt my back. I don't feel like messing with that. And if I'm being totally honest, deadlifting is just hard. And I was like, I don't really feel like dealing with that. And then some light switch went off and I was like, I need to be good at deadlifting. And so I just started deadlifting a lot. I was deadlifting multiple times a week, and I started pretty light and worked my way up. And what I figured out is that the more I deadlifted, the more comfortable I felt with deadlifting.
Yes. The
less my back hurt, the better I felt. There were less repercussions that I suffered the day after a training session, the more I did it.
For sure.
Yeah. Is that going to be the case with everyone? Probably not. There are exceptions for sure. But I think generally that's true. Generally, the more you do something, the better you're going to get at it. As long as you're not being stupid about it and over trying to force stuff. If you're training smart, the more experience you have, the stronger you get, the more comfortable you feel.
Yes, there is no more inherent risk with deadlifting than with any other exercise.
Or with bending over to pick up your kid.
Getting behind the wheel of your truck to drive to work. It was way riskier than anything you could ever do in a weight room. But deadlifting is not especially bad or scary.
No.
And this is going to be controversial and we don't have time to go in depth on this video, but nor is a back injury any scarier than any other injury. Like your back is not some magical body part that once you tweak it, take you out and shoot you for the glue factory like a horse. That's not what your back will heal just fine. I promise you. And obviously we take all the precautions. You never want to go in the weight room and get hurt in any facet. And no, generally strength training is a pretty low risk endeavor. But
when you consider it, especially, there have been studies on this, considering strength training versus almost anything else that you could do in sports, CrossFit, ultra running, marathons, 5Ks, playing some sort of ball sport, strength training is by far the lowest percentage of injury, per time spent in the sport.
Yes. Yeah. But even that said, if and when little tweaks do come up, whatever the body part it is, you will heal and you will be fine.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world. So
in fact, one of the worst things you could probably do in that situation is just never, ever use that particular thing that you tweaked ever again.
Exactly.
It is going to degrade. Exactly. It is going to stop working. And then when you need it, it's not going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
and forever you're going to be that guy that's like, I've got a bad back, I can't do XYZ.
Yes.
Not saying that there aren't people who have those issues, but generally speaking, it shouldn't be everyone.
No.
And right now it seems like in our society, everyone has a bad knees and a bad back.
Yeah.
And you're like, probably not. Probably
highly unlikely.
Probably we just need to work on it a little bit. So just probably we're probably pretty aligned on that opinion.
So, for sure. For sure.
But anyways,
as you guys are watching this, if you have specific questions, let us know. We happily answer. This is something that, well, it is pretty simple. It's not rocket science. At the same time, especially as you're getting into it, the nuances can be a little bit hard to grasp, especially as you're physically starting to do it for the first couple times. So questions that come up, let us know. We will happily get you guys kind of filled in and squared away with anything that comes up.
Absolutely.